The following program is brought to you by Element 14, the electronics community where you can connect and collaborate with top engineers from around the world. Join now at element14.com/presents.
Do you remember your first pet? Now, I'm not talking about the family pet that might have been around when you were a kid. I'm talking about the first pet that was actually yours. Now, for many of us, that memory might involve picking out a puppy at the pound or finding a stray cat in your backyard. But for a lot of people my age, our first pet was found at a Radio Shack or a Kmart or a Circuit City. You know, one of those brick and mortar stores that are definitely still around. Because our first pet was a digital toy created by Bandai called a Tamagotchi, which is why I'm holding up an egg. You see, Tamagotchi is actually combinations of the word tamago and wachi, which are the Japanese words for egg and watch. Imagine that.
Amazing hacks. Inspired designs. Each week, Element 14 Presents brings you innovative projects using electronics, engineering, and more.
Welcome back to Element 14 Presents. My name is DJ, and that is correct, kids. Today, we are going to be bringing some of the late 1990s into the 2020s. My God, is it really that year? Wow, it's very far in the future. So what does that actually mean for today's episode? Well, I could technically recreate a Tamagotchi from scratch. Bandai still owns the trademark and it's all messy. So I'm going to be creating an homage to the Tamagotchi. We'll call it a Tomodachi, which is the Japanese word for friend, because I was and still am a weeb. I won't pretend that I'm not. Anyway, so I will be making an updated digital pet that you can create at home, and it will bear a striking resemblance, but is in no way a legal direct copy. I'm not selling it. Please don't sue me, Bandai. All joking aside, this is going to be a very straightforward build that requires very few parts, so you can do this cheaply at home on your own, and it will be a fun distraction. You can always find out more by checking out the links in the description below. Okay, so let's get down to the actual technical design of the Tamagotchi. Now, one of the most important things for anything that has a user interface, in my opinion, is the screen. While the original Tamagotchi had a painfully small 16 by 32 pixel display, and that's correct, everything seems so much higher resolution when you're a kid. I'm gonna want a little bit more screen real estate. Now, I could use a monochrome LCD, that's still very much an option, but I feel like today's cheap equivalent is an OLED. So I'm gonna be using this 1.3 inch monochrome OLED display. It's got a SPI interface, so we can get a great refresh rate, and it is a whopping 1.3 inches diagonal. So that will be nice and compact. Now, also need a processor to drive everything, and I don't really need a crazy specs or anything like that. So I'm going to be using the Arduino MKR0, which is a nice little compact ARM-compatible, Arduino-compatible board. Nothing too fancy there. For input, the original game had some teeny tiny rubber dome switches. Now, that's a little bit too painful for my adult hands, so instead I'm going to be using some 12mm tactile switches. And I'll also need a power switch, because there's no built-in power switch for the MKR board. We'll need a battery, so a lithium polymer battery, single cell, very important. The board can only charge and run off of a single cell. This is a 1200 milliamp hour battery, which is certainly plenty, will run it forever. And last but certainly not least, we will need a piezo speaker for all those classic beeps and boops that are essential to this kind of design. Let's put it together. Okay, so here we are in Fusion 360, and I've got my design for the Tomodachi case ready to go. Now let me go back a bit and show you how I think through these kinds of things. For the most part, with very little exception, I always model or find the 3D models of all of the major components that I'm going to use. So I usually do a lookup for more popular ones like the switches or this feather board. And yes, I've moved over to a feather. Don't worry about it, it's functionally the same. It's actually the same microcontroller under the hood. I just needed to swap this out instead. I've got the OLED display, and I couldn't find actually the exact one I had. No big, it is a fairly simple part. The piezo, which is just a nice simple cylinder, LiPo battery. I generally don't model wires. It would certainly be helpful, but it's extremely tedious. And if I know that I have enough space, so I just gave myself enough space between parts so that I can route all the cables and other conductive bits throughout the case. Let's go back to the case. So it's fairly straightforward. I've just got a few main pieces. We've got the face plate, which is just a friction fit into the main case. It's also got these little tabs so that it lines up properly, because I didn't want some screws exposed on the face. Fairly straightforward. And we've got mounting points for the switch, a friction fit for the piezo. We've got screw mounts for the screen. And underneath that, let me take away the faceplate. We've got this little insert piece, and this is where the switches mount, where the feather mounts. Now the switches obviously are just on these little riser posts, so I'll have to glue them down, which sucks. But it is just a really simple way to get everything in the right location. And below this, we've got our battery wedged in there, which is a very tight fit, but don't worry, I've already gone to the future and checked that it fits just fine. And that is just held in by the back plate. Let me just turn the main shell on. So even though I can put the battery in, I would still have to disconnect it from the feather to take it out. So I would still have to take the whole thing apart, but I probably won't have to do that a whole lot. And that's just about it. I think it's time to actually put this together and start testing her out. Okay, so I've gone ahead and 3D printed the pieces, and it's thankfully very comfortable to actually hold in hand. It's always difficult to tell, you know, I can use, and I have used 3D models like hands and people for scale reference, but you never really know what something's going to feel like until you've got it in your hands. So the design definitely feels as shallow as I want. I try to keep it reasonably compact, but I always make a big effort to make things easy for me to access and screw in or glue in, or sorry, avoid glue in, because I hate using glue for projects. But the design is pretty straightforward. You see it's got a nice, it's a good fit. But this is faceplate version number 1. Version number 2 has a few more details. One thing I don't see too often, I did not come up with this idea, but one really fun thing I like to do lately is create surface level details that are flush with like a faceplate design using a 3D printer. And it's actually really easy to do, because as long as you just have a design, maybe it's text or just artwork, that is only a layer height deep, you can print that on the bed with no support material, and then, assuming your bed is nice and level, you have your regular first layer finish, but then you have all these nice features which are flush to that first layer. Something to keep in mind, I think more people should try it out. It's a really great way to add some nice texture or text with very little added work. Now, as you can see, this was printed in black PLA, but that's not really, you know, that's not the garish 90s color scheme that I really want. So I went ahead and made some more iterations and gave them this nice secondary color palette. It's not one that I would willingly choose, but this is, you know, it's going for that nostalgia appeal, and I feel like Every gadget in the 90s, or at least every kid's toy, had this, Nerf, really bold aesthetic, bold color palette. So I've gone ahead and made some more pieces. And that's about it. We've also got a plain insert piece, and this will allow mounting for the switches and the microcontroller, but that doesn't need to be colorful since it will never be seen. But it is time to put this together, so let's do that.
Hey, how would you like to get free stuff like this? The Element 14 Road Test program sends you free products in exchange for detailed reviews posted to the community. Head over to element14.com to see past reviews and apply to be a road tester today.
All right, it is time, ladies and gentlemen. Now I could, just go over to the computer and talk about my code, but why don't I actually show you what this does in the full demonstration. If I did a full code explanation, this would be certainly an hour-long video. Anyway, let's turn this bad girl on. So we are greeted with a splash screen, and I just need to accept that. So the first page you'll see is the list of mini games. We'll get back to these in a second because this is a very important part. So to the left, we can see our character, and our character I've cleverly named Tomo. So Tomo is just idling there, and oh yeah, so he's fine. I don't know if you can pick up the eye movement. This is level 0 Tomo, so let's go to the stats page. Not a whole lot of information. I try to keep everything fairly minimal, not overloaded, so we can see his level. And power. So power is functionally experience points. And just to cheese the demo a little bit, I've given myself nearly maximum power so that we can see what happens when he gets maximum power. So let's go back to the mini games, and we'll just go down the list. So the first one is called Power Go. No, that's not what I want. Forget, I need to hold down the switch in order to accept it. Now this one is a reaction game. So I'll talk a little bit about the UI too. We've got the lives in the top left, which are just represented by little T characters, and we've got the score in the top right. And right here in the middle is just a count, so I'm just gonna press this up, and I need to choose the lightning bolt before it runs out, but avoid the bug. And if I get, oh, see, I screwed up, I didn't go fast enough, so. Okay, got that. All right, so I died on that one. This is a lot harder to watch via the viewfinder than it is with my own eyes. But we'll go down to Stack It, which is the next game, which is also kind of a reaction game. It's a reaction game. So let's go ahead and choose that guy. Oh wait, I forgot, I added another feature. You can't just keep playing games, you need to go look at Tomo. So looking at Tomo allows you to go back and unlock games. So let me go back down to this, and I shouldn't hold it. All right, so this is like one of those arcade stacker games. So I've just got that, and oh, that's what it is. There's latency in the viewfinder. I should have known that. So let me stack those up. All right, let me actually look at this. This is much more challenging than all right, I gotta go look at Tomo, go back to the game, back to the game, and do this. So there's no need to wait for the first level. And this one is relatively easy once I actually look at it. Boop, boop. Hooray, I won. Oh, I'm at max power, which means Tomo's leveling up. What happens when Tomo levels up? Oh, he got little antennae. That's pretty cool. All right, so Tomo is leveled up. You can see he's level 1 now, and I'm back to normal power. And let's go back to the rest of the games. So, game number 3 is called Memo Sim, so memorize the symbol. Keep doing that. Gotta hold down. So I've got 10 seconds to memorize all these, and I have to remember the order. So because I was talking, I didn't remember the order. So we'll just not quite paying attention, but you get the idea. We have like flashcards. We get to see them for a second, and then they'll all turn into this box symbol. So then I'll have to memorize the pattern and figure out what order the symbols were in. And I just was not paying attention, so I'm literally just randomly guessing. So I died on that one, but I think you get the gist. And last but not least, let's go to Lucky 64, which oh, I gotta look at Tomo. Gotta look at Tomo again. Let's go back to Lucky 64. And this is kind of, okay, it's also a reaction game. More like a slot machine style in the sense that I want to get all of the right symbols in order. So let me just click on the first one. So thumbtack. So thumbtack comes right after, I missed it again. So it's the same set. Thumbtack comes after mouse. So as soon as I hit the mouse, I should press. All right, I got that. And got that. And let's keep going. Got that. All right, so I got 4 points for that. Oh, all right. So that one leveled up. So if I should. All right. Tomo's maxed out again. What's happening? Oh, his antenna got even fancier. All right. So that is the main gameplay loop for Tomo. Now, yes, this is a totally different device. It's not literally a Tamagotchi. It's an homage to a Tamagotchi, inspired by. But I actually really like playing with this. It's quite a bit more fun than I thought it would be. And even considering that, I designed this and I spent lots of time in the code, it's actually enjoyable for me to play it. So let me set this down and we'll talk a little bit more about it. See, why spend $30 online to buy a piece of your childhood when you can spend 30 hours and make a crappy imitation of it? Well, that's not true. I don't think this is crappy. I'm actually quite fond of my digital friend. And that has nothing to do with the current situation. Absolutely none. I'm not starved for emotional connections. Anyway, back to Tomodachi. I've realized that I can never be a Twitch streamer. Playing games and talking to you guys is actually a lot harder than I thought it would be. But this is a really fun and straightforward project. It's probably one of the lowest part count builds I've ever worked on. But I'm excited about that because that means it's really easy for you to do it at home. Honestly, as long as you have the same size OLED display, 3 buttons, and a microcontroller that can handle all of the memory requirements of the fancy graphics, then you're good to go. You don't need my case, but if you want it, you can always go to the Element 14 community at element14.com/presents, where you can download all of the files from this build, including the 3D parts, the 3D models, and the code, and whatever other freebies I'm gonna give to you guys. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this build. I enjoyed it, and I think I'm gonna go play with my friend for a little while longer, and I'll see you guys in a month.